In this video, I'm going to use Renoise Redux to take a fairly boring percussion sample and create some variations for it for this track I'm working on. So first, let's listen to the original sample. And here are some variations I created using Redux. Alright, so just before we start, I'm going to assume you have some knowledge of Redux or that you've watched my previous videos, so I'm not going to go into fine details over everything I'm doing. If something isn't clear, you can ask me in the comments, or I probably already included it in my previous video. Let's start by pulling in a new Redux, dragging in the sample. First thing to note is that the sample is no longer beat synced because Ableton Live's warp isn't applying here. We can fix that by applying the beat sync. Let's change this to percussion. Alright, the first most straightforward way to create slices is using the slice command. It's super easy, very fast. However, because this sample is very repetitive, it's not going to achieve much for us. I want to first show you how I'm using this technique on a different sample, and then we'll go to see how we can slice this one in more details. So let's take one of the samples that comes with Redux. Let's take a break. Let's create a phrase for it. Okay, it's wildly different tempo, so I'm going to change for a second my tempo to fit this sample. Just for the sake of example, let's turn on the beat sync, even though it's not really necessary. So this beat sync says that it's going to take 64 rows for the whole pattern to play. So here, when I'm playing only 32 rows, it's only going to play half the sample. But since this sample is sliced to 256 mini slices, since it's divided by 64, it means that every 4 rows covers 16 samples, something like that. And in hex, 16 is equal to 10. So when I write 10, I actually mean 16. I know this may sound a bit confusing, but it's actually super simple. What this means is that every 4 rows, I can retrigger my sample increasing by 10, or in decimal 16 samples. So what I did here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and this will basically repeat this beat sync that I did here. See, this line triggers this sample here, and it's perfectly synced. What this lets me do is to start fucking around and trying different positions. So instead of 10, I'm going to put here 30, maybe here 50. I don't really know what's going to happen. Let's see. Yeah, something like that. So for example, something I could do is like let's take this down to 16. It'll be a bit easier to work with. Make a tiny phrase. So basically, I'm just using this tiny fact that every 4 rows are equal to 16 samples to create this tiny reshuffling of the sample. Now this is not really going to work well with the sample I have. Let's listen why. So I'm repeating the same exercise of triggering every 4 rows, increasing the sample slice by 10. Let's go back to our original. Now let's shuffle this up. Yeah, it sounds almost the same, because other than the bass here on the front, it's all just open hits. It's not giving me enough control. I mean, I could use this technique to achieve what I want, but it's going to take on much longer, be a lot more excruciating than just slicing it up and using the samples, the different sounds wherever I want. So we've seen this in the previous video. I'm just going to create some slices. Let's see what I've got. You're not triggering. That's not fun. All right. Here we go. All right, so first thing I want is the bass. And an open hit. And those are the 2 main sounds I'm interested in. Maybe. I'm not gonna try to create perfect samples here, just to save some time. Let's render what we have. Keep only with the first 3 samples. Yeah. And quickly fix them up so they don't sound too terrible. Okay, this is pretty bad. I'm gonna have to redo this. Okay, the bass was okay, but the open was pretty bad. All right. Delete the rest. Here I just want the bass. And here just the open. Okay, this is a bit better. So let's see what we can do. Now that I have the separate samples, I can just trigger them whatever I want. So let's create maybe a tiny beat. I'm using here this sample mode. By default it's not on, and it's using the key map. I find it easier to work with the samples that I can see here what I'm triggering. So this is 1, this is the 1, and this is going to be 2. All right. So let's make a very done. Can use the original sample to add a bit of a flavor to this. Okay, reduce the volume a bit. Alright, so this is one variation. Let's maybe create a second variation. This time I want to use another effect. I'm going to use a roll, kind of like a retrigger effect, where it sounds like a roll. Let's try this. Again, I want to use this sample thing. Let's see where I put a roll. Maybe here. So R retriggers the sample every X ticks or Y ticks. I like 4 usually. Let's see how it sounds like. It's a bit loud, so it's a good idea to reduce the volume of rolls a bit. So it should be 16. Let's create another one. This time using triplets. So the thing with Renoise is that it's kind of like based on 4s. So you can't really subdivide this here naturally to 3s. But you can use the delay effect to create triplets. Let's see how to do that. I'm gonna duplicate this one. And end this with 2 sets of triplets. So this is not going to sound good. This is not what I want. Alright, now I want to make this into triplets. There's this website that tells you what values you need to create the triplets with. So if you have 4 rows and you want 3 notes, all you have to do is enter these values. You've got your triplets. So this is using the Renoise commands, which is D, but in Redux it's Q. So instead of D4, I'm going to insert Q4. Oops, put it in the wrong place. Q4, Q8. See here that it says delay by note, so I know I'm on the right effect. Q4, Q8. Let's just turn off this one. Now, just a small touch. These samples are turning off each other. So when this triggers and this triggers, the first one is gonna turn itself off, which is not really what I want. I want the tail to be playing the whole time. So to prevent that, you can change here to continue. Only on this sample. I just want the hits to sound like that. All right. What else can we do? Maybe one more variation with a reverse. So let's get rid of the roll. And maybe do a reverse, which is B. So if you enter the B effect, it's just going to play the sample backwards. Alright, not the best variations ever. I don't want to spend all day here making the perfect variations. I just want to show you the tools you have to make these variations and the tool I used here. So once I open what I've done, I can show you exactly what's happening. Last thing we want to do is we want to map this so we can play it in live. I want to maybe give them names. It would be a bit easier to work with. So this is some bass, nothing fancy. This is triplets. This is roll. This is reverse. Now I'm gonna put them on a key map, starting at 0. So Renoise, when you drop it, it automatically selects a whole octave. I used to try to set them so they only take one note, but it's kind of annoying. There's no way to disable this default, so I'm just going to work with the octaves here. Let's drop this on C, drop this on the next C, and so forth. You can see that the label's appearing here, helping me remember what the patterns are. If I close the editor, I can see it here as well. And let's put them in. So I just want the C notes. So this is 0. Let's see what it maps to on Renoise. So to -2. So as I showed in my previous video, there's a 2-octave difference between Redux and Live, meaning that 0 for Live means 2 for Redux. So 0 for Redux means -2 for Live. So let's start with just the base one. Let's mute this for now. And let's add the roll. Let's add the reverse and finish with the triplets. So as you can see, it's really fast to create some variations. Of course, it's not perfect. It doesn't sound perfect. It takes a bit of tweaking to get the sound you want. I actually didn't spend that much time on the slices I have. That's why I like Redux, because it's very quick to create some stuff and see what sticks. Let's open what I have. Let's see what I've done there. It's all going to look very familiar. I've used every technique I just showed you. So as you can see, I gave them names and just dropped them here, so it's easy to access. Let's look at the first variation. So I've just used the slicing technique and retriggering of the bass and the slap. Just cut a bit better, that's why they sound better. But there's really not much here. Here I decreased a bit the volume of the slap to make it a bit more subtle. Let's remove this. What do we got here? This is just a straight up loop. Here I've got the roll effect here instead of here. Doesn't really make a difference. Just changing order. This is the triplets that we've seen. More triplets. More triplets. And more triplets, and that's it. This doesn't take much to create. I think the original, just the slicing took me the most amount of time, and creating the variations took maybe like an hour or two. I created extra samples here. I had this idea of using randomization to add a bit of liveliness to the samples. So basically what this means is that for every row you can randomly retrigger one of the slices that you have. So let's see if I remember how to do this. So let's say I have 2 bass sounds, this one and that one. Now they're playing together, but I can give this a command called maybe. Where is it? It's a Y that tells it to trigger one of them randomly. So the value here is probability, but I think if I give them both 100% probability and then add another maybe on the whole row, it will trigger always one of them. Maybe I'm wrong. Oh, the Y was in the wrong place. Okay, doesn't look like 50-50. Maybe that's just a math thing, but you do see that sometimes this one is triggered, sometimes the other one is triggered. This is a nice way to humanize a bit the patterns. I started with it and then found it a bit excruciating without a huge payoff, but just so you know that this is possible. All right, so let's listen maybe to like a piece of the track with the original sample and then with maybe the stuff we did and then what I made. So let's turn off these ones, turn on this one. Okay, nothing wrong with that, it's just a bit boring. I think variation is really important in music. So that's why I wanted to create these variations. When I was creating them, I was just creating a bunch and just played around in the order to see what made sense. So as you can see, that's like a slight improvement, but it's pretty significant. Otherwise, I'd have this same loop playing from start to finish, would bore the ears very quickly. Let's listen to the one we made, see how it lands. Yeah, it's not bad. Yeah, I hope you got something out of this. Renoise Redux is really good for this kind of stuff. You can of course use Ableton for this as well, or many other tools. I just find Redux, once you understand the quirky UI, it's very quick to create some variations using samples. Yeah, this is it. See you next time.